Now, true believers, spoilers ahead. I know we couldn't have a Stan Lee cameo in this review, but I thought I'd just throw that in there. Hi everyone, and welcome back to Comic Book Issues. I'm your host, Brian Heinz, the Last Angry Geek. And it's time for my vlog review of Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. This is the first really major animated Marvel film that I can think of, and it features Miles Morales. This is a Miles Morales story that just happens to have Peter Parker as a supporting character. It's his origin story, and Miles is going to a new school out of his old neighborhood. This is from the Ultimate Spider-Man comic book. He's a genius. He's going to this new school. He's not happy there. He feels like he can't express himself. He wants to go back to his old school. The only one who kind of treats him cool. He has problems with his parents, but his Uncle Aaron treats him well and lets him be himself. And while he's doing graffiti with his uncle in the sewers off the subway, he gets bit by a radioactive spider and starts developing Spider-Man powers. He goes back to there, finds the spider, and this leads him to a giant particle collider that the Kingpin has built under the city. Spider-Man is there, Peter Parker, and in this universe, Peter Parker is a very popular, well-known superhero, huge kind of marketing presence. He's really made the most of his life as Spider-Man. But while taking on some of the Kingpin's villains, he dies. But not before finding Miles, seeing he has powers, and making him promise to use this USB key he's built to stop the collider before it rips open the multiverse. From there, he meets another Peter Parker who's a complete loser, the exact opposite of this Peter Parker. He's made a mess of his life outside of being Spider-Man. His aunt's died. His wife, Mary Jane, has left him, and he's eating junk food all the time, feeling sorry for himself. So these two have to kind of team up to send Peter home and stop the Kingpin from ripping up the universe, because essentially the Kingpin is trying to find an alternate universe version of his wife and son, because they just died when they saw that he was a criminal, that he was fighting Spider-Man. They left him and got killed in a car accident. So to assuage his guilt, he's trying to find a universe where they're still alive and he can have them back. So when they track down the scientist who built this, it turns out she's a female version of Dr. Octopus in this universe, and then they get saved by Gwen Stacy from another universe, Spider-Gwen, or Spider-Woman as she's known, or Ghost Spider. She's currently in the comic books. They find out there's all these other Spider-Men from universes who got pulled into Miles' universe. Essentially, they're dying. So essentially, all these characters have got to go home, and Miles is going to have to be the one to send them home, because if they stay here to shut the thing off, they'll die, because they don't fit in this universe, and they're having these kind of weird spasm attacks. So then it becomes a team film where the Spider-Men have to defeat the Kingpin and his army of supervillains, send everyone home, and destroy the Collider. Now, this is one of the best superhero movies I've ever seen, and let me back that up and say this is probably the best comic book movie I've ever seen. And what I mean by that is this is almost literally a comic book adapted into a movie. You've got thought balloons, you've got mental narration, you've got like speed lines when they're running. There are a lot of things that they put in comic books that they took out and put on the screen with animation that you would not normally see in a live-action superhero film. So this is like almost literally a comic book on the big screen. The humor is very funny. There are a lot of good sight gags. The action is shot in such a way with the framing and the animation that it's very intense and kind of in your face and over the top, and that's really good for a lot of like the spider swinging scenes when all those Doc Ock tentacles are coming in out of frame to try and grab them. The scale of that super collider just feels huge, so you got them running around very small in this big giant frame sometimes. Let's talk about the cast a little. There's Shameik Moore, who plays Miles Morales, and I have no complaints with his performance. I mean, he sounds like a kid, and he's able to emote at times when he's, the death of certain characters gets to him, and all the voice actors did a good job in this, but some did a better job than others. Shameik Moore was fine. Everyone was fine. I'll point out the standouts when I get to them. And this really works as Miles' origin story, because he's got to deal with everyone kind of saying, you've got all this potential, you've got to live up to it, but he doesn't want to be in this new school. You've got all this potential, but you got to find out how to use it, but he can't please his parents. He's got to deal with failing to save Peter Parker in the opening. He's got to deal with all these other Spider-Men coming in with all this experience, but he can't match up to them. He can't control his powers yet. So at the time when they need him most, they bench him and say, "You're not coming with us because you're not there yet. The learning curve is too steep, and if you go into this dangerous situation, you're going to die." So he feels like he's letting them down, especially since Peter Parker says he's going to stay behind to send the others home, and that will kill him. In a lot of ways, he has the great power. What he can't handle is the great responsibility. So this story is about him growing into that responsibility and finding a way to channel himself into using this power to reach that potential everyone has always seen in him. Jake Johnson played Peter B. Parker. I think Chris Pine, Captain America, did the voice of the popular Peter Parker, which might explain why he was blonde. Loser Peter Parker is Jake Johnson. He's a very fun character. He's just kind of self-pitying. He's kind of lost his aunt. He's driven his wife away because she wanted to start a family, but that level of responsibility scared him. So he's eating junk food all the time. He's just kind of saying, "Nah, you can't do it, kid. You can't do it." He's just this complete bozo. But the nice thing about this movie is like the three leads all kind of heal themselves by the end. Miles and Peter have this nice sort of double act, and most of the time he's the mentor, but by the end he sees that Miles has grown enough that he can trust him to save the day, so he goes home and allows Miles to shut down the Collider and defeat the Kingpin on his own, because he sees that Miles is now Spider-Man. He's grown into this hero that he needed to be, and he recognizes that. Whereas Peter has seen just what his life could have been if he'd stuck with it, and he gets reunited with Mary Jane, this universe's Mary Jane, and that kind of just drives home how much he misses her, so he kind of gets his act together. They get back together at the end of that one. Again, spoilers. Haley Steinfeld as Gwen Stacy. So Haley Steinfeld was one of the better actors. She really kind of has a nice voice control. So, I mean, you know, she's kind of laughing to herself and talking to herself when we first meet her. These awkward moments where she stops herself from revealing too much early on in the film before we find out that she's also a Spider-Man, Spider-Woman. It was just little touches like that that really made me enjoy her performance. I guess my only question about her was, how did she get enrolled in this prestigious private school if she was stuck in our universe with no parents and no money? They didn't explain how that happened. How she's just going to this extremely hard to get into school that Miles is at, and nobody questions it. So Lily Tomlin is Aunt May, and she was really good. She's basically Alfred the Butler in this universe. She was in on everything and kind of unlocks the spider cave for all the Spider-Men to use and helps Miles with his costume, and she just is kind of on top of everything. She just not like and that's how Aunt May should be. She should be competent, not the doddering old woman from the Raimi films or the comic books. Like, more, I liked the competent Aunt May from the Amazing Spider-Man films. I still haven't seen Homecoming, so I don't know how good she was, how good Marissa Tomei was in that, or if she was terrible. I don't know. But I like a more competent Aunt May, not a senile old woman making wheat cakes. Liev Schreiber as the Kingpin was another one of the good voice actors, because he was kind of playing this thug character, which the Kingpin is not, but he was kind of doing it like, you got 24 hours to make this happen. Kind of like the arrogant, all-knowing, I can't do any wrong businessman, criminal type. But then there were moments when you see how he loses the family and how that's haunting him, when he sees his family again, when he's reenacting the same mistake that drove them away, and he's like, no, the desperation for them to stay with him. There were moments like that that made the performance stand out, and that's a testament to Schreiber's voice acting, but also the animators who really kind of drove it home with the facial expressions on the Kingpin. Catherine Hahn is Doc Ock. She was fine voice acting. She kind of made Doc Ock sound like this nerd until the kind of big reveal where she's, my last name's Octavius, and friends call you Doc Ock. My friends call me Liv. My enemies call me Doc Ock, and the tentacles come out. She was able to turn it from kind of like quirky to creepy really good, quick. And I enjoyed that kind of twist that we didn't realize she was the Dr. Octopus of this universe until it's too late when she mentions, I'm going to enjoy watching you die this way. I'm like, what? So it was cool that Doc Ock was a female. I didn't see that coming. Bad me. I was sexist. But I made an assumption. So I enjoy getting surprises like that. As for the rest of the Spider-Man, there was Kimiko Glenn as Penny Parker with the manga Spider-Bot, and that was fine. I don't really have anything to say about that performance. No complaints. John Mulaney, who is one of my favorite stand-up comics in the whole world, he was really funny as Spider-Ham, and they just portrayed it like a Warner Brothers cartoon character. He has got giant hammers. He's got all these funny lines, and John Mulaney can't act. If you saw him on SNL, his sole acting move is talking like this, but that kind of worked for Spider-Ham. And then Spider-Man Noir, voiced by Nicolas Cage. doing a kind of over-the-top Sam Spade detective voice. And it works. It really works. Nicolas Cage turned in a very good performance. Who knew? So, being over the top worked for him here. The Stan Lee cameo. That was brutal, because we just lost him, and his first line is, you know, I'm really gonna miss him. Yeah, I know. We're really gonna miss you, Stan. That was a harsh line for that to be the first cameo to come out post Stan's death. I thought the Prowler was handled really well. I forget the voice actor's name, but the way they did it with those like clicking claws. I mean, he was almost like a horror villain. Like he's like Michael Myers or Jason. Like he keeps coming. We're throwing buses at him, explosions. And he keeps coming, and every time you think you're safe, you start hearing those clicking, and they play that intense music. So it was a really strange way to handle the Prowler, who's just like a superpowered criminal, but it made him work. And then the revelation that we find out that it's Uncle Aaron, and Miles is there invisible and on the running from it, that shock and intensity all really worked for the character. I almost wish he was the main villain instead of just like working for the Kingpin. It was a nice knock on Spider-Man 3, the whole dancing thing. Just a little slam there. I don't think it's possible to not enjoy this film. It is so good. It's so much fun. Kids are going to love it. Comic book fans are going to love it because there's so much to see there. If you're not a comic book fan, you just know superheroes from live action films, you'll like it. You may not love it, but you'll like it. So swing, don't run, swing into the nearest theater and watch Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. It's one of the best superhero movies possibly of all time. I hope we get more animated films from this studio. Thank you, Sony. We don't hear that enough. Thank you, Sony. You put out a good superhero movie. Until next time, my friends, when we do the vlog for Aquaman, this is Comic Book Issues, and I'm your host, Brian Heinz, the Last Angry Geek.